This presentation begins the study of Imperial Japan. Remember that this presentation is only a visual representation of the most important information, and there are much more detailed notes and readings on the website. We'll start with the most recent time periods in the history of an ancient country, the Sengoku period, the Tokugawa period, and the Meiji period. If we're going to be studying Japan in World War II, which happened in the 1940s, then why are we studying medieval Japan? To understand where a country is, just like a person, you have to understand where and what it developed out of. Just like to understand who you are, we need to understand where your parents and grandparents came from and the type of people that they were. This is one part of what we call historical context. During the Middle Ages in Europe, Japan was also fairly medieval. It was a massive period of civil war and small states fighting against each other. It was ruled by an emperor, like a king, but he did not have much power. Instead of an emperor having power to rule, most of the power was held by a man named a shogun. The shogun was like a military dictator. The period after the Sengoku period was called the Tokugawa period, or Tokugawa shogunate, named after the first ruler of this time period. During these 250 plus years, Japan became what we now consider a unified nation, ruled by a central government in the city of Tokyo, or Edo. During the Tokugawa shogunate, Japan had isolationist policies, which meant that they pretty much kept outside countries out. The people grew a bit wealthier. The people were divided into social classes, controlled by the military, led by a shogun. The top social class was the samurai, who helped local leaders rule both their political and military lives. And during this time, people began to enjoy the finer things in life. Then came what would eventually turn into modern Japan, the Meiji Period. Japan moved towards the rule of law and a written constitution and stripped the samurai and shoguns of their powers and privileges. Instead of getting power from being born into a certain class, people gained status from working or earning votes if they were in the government. In other words, Japan became boring. After being greeted by American warships, Japan realized that the only way to gain America's and the West's respect was to become them. During this time, Japan did everything it could to become the power in Asia that America was becoming in the rest of the world. They built factories in the Western styles of America and Europe. They produced all kinds of goods for both their citizens and the rest of the world. They sought to modernize their military, especially their navy. They went from being reliant on the traditional Japanese junk. Yes, the name of this type of ship is actually a junk. To building this type of warship to rule the seas around Asia. They began expanding into the Asian mainland, starting wars and claiming territory from Korea, China, and the USSR in order to take resources from these countries as well as to sell their goods. So there you have it, 500 years of Japanese history in under 5 minutes. The Sengoku period of civil war and chaos, the Tokugawa period of strict military rule and nation building, and the Meiji period, when Japan began to become a player in modern world politics. Remember, this is just a very brief overview with images to put with the ideas. Much more detailed information for those of you that need it is in Part 1 of the Imperial Japan Notes and the readings on the IB Global website.